Hi there, it's Grace Kraaijvanger. Welcome back to the Art of What's Next podcast. And I think you're going to love today's episode with my dear friend, Jadah Sellner. Jadah is a best-selling author of an incredible book called She Builds. She's a business coach. She's a sought-after international keynote and TEDx speaker, and she's the host of the Lead with Love podcast. Jadah's on a mission to redefine the future of work by leading with love in our business and our lives. She's been such a phenomenal inspiration for me, and I'm thrilled to share our conversation. Without further ado, please meet my friend, Jadah. Hello, Jadah. I'm so glad you're here today. Thank you so much for being with me.
I'm excited for us to have this cozy conversation. I feel we have a lot of conversations offline, in person, and it's fun to get a recorded conversation between us.
I love it too. I love it too. And I'm really excited to show off your new book. I love your book. And for those of you that are listening, Jadah's book is called She Builds, the Anti-Hustle Guide to Grow Your Business and Nourish Your Life, which is like the mantra of Jadah Sellner. It's what I love about you. It's what so many women have relied upon, your sage advice and your wisdom. So I'm just so glad you're here to chat about it. It's so fun.
Thank you. And I also just want to thank you for hosting the very first book celebrate, like on her birthday, you got to celebrate She Builds and with the High Break community, which was just such a dream come true. And I'm so appreciative.
Oh, I loved it. And it was so special for me too, because your book event was, I think, the very first big in-person event that I did and that the Hivery did post-pandemic. And it just like lit up all my energy, kind of gave me my feeling of like grace, like my feeling of graceness back. And it meant the world to me. So that was really fun. Well, let's talk about your book. Yeah. I think I'm not sure that your book could be any more timely. I think right now we need, we need this message of anti-hustle, and we need this message of doing things differently and knowing that we finally have permission to do things differently. But how did you know that you started writing this book years ago, right? Or I'm not sure. We'll have to talk about that. But how did you know that that's what you wanted to explore in the book? And will you talk to us a bit about that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just listening to one of my future visions, which I talk about in chapter 3 of the book, about architecting your future vision and really imagining where you will be, how it will feel 3 years from the current date. And I was talking about a global book club. In that one was probably written in 2016 and recorded in 2017. So I think it's so important to name that, because many times book ideas get planted on our hearts very early on, and it takes so many years to get the book deal, to then write the book draft, to then market it and get it out into the world, just how much time and life has to happen. And I got my book deal in 2020, but I was trying to get it in 2018 and 2019. And then I entered a season of grief and a lot of loss in a very short amount of time, with my father passing, with putting our 13-year-old fur baby down, and then my 16-year-old brother passing away. And I had to let the book rest and also live into the book. And I was very torn, because I'm like, well, I need this book out in the world right now, and I just believe in divine timing so much, because had I not lived through that season where I actually had to pause, I had to lay it all down, I had to stop pushing, that so much wisdom and deeper lived experience was able to be sprinkled throughout the book that wouldn't even be in there if I hadn't had that season of pause. And so the timing of it is what I'm saying is I've been thinking about this book for 5+ years before it actually came out into the world, and also experimenting and testing with my clients through private coaching and my group masterminds. And so there's been a lot that's poured into what's in this book today.
Yes, yes. And I'm sure it's so reassuring to our listeners as well as to myself. I've been working on a book for years, that. And someone told me once it takes as long as it takes.
Yeah.
And during that period, life is happening, like what happened for you, loss and grief. And as artists, writers and artists that are um, sharing our creative expression, our life pours through. And I mean, in some ways, that's what makes your book so relatable and emotionally connected, is because we can feel you so close to us in the book. But it's in a way because you allowed those life moments to happen, to inform the book, to inform the timing of the book, and I'm sure to inform the themes of the book as well.
Yeah. And I think it's so important for us as creatives, as entrepreneurs, as leaders in our own life, giving ourselves permission to be slow cookers in our creativity, in our output, in our expressions, versus us being pressure cookers in how we put our work out into the world, and allowing things to simmer, giving ourselves space to let things digest. Like that piece really is the way that we embrace the anti-hustle way of being.
Right, right. It's different. It's different than what we were conditioned to do. It's different than what our habits are. I mean, in some ways, I think it's both like instinctual and what we've wanted all along as human beings. And at the same time, we're not used to it. So we have to keep
Mm.
reminding ourselves that there is another way.
Yeah.
And I love that you're calling it for what it is. And it's that we can create a new culture and a new vision in a new way.
Yes.
I love that. I love that. Some of the things that have been coming up, and you talk about them a lot in the book. We did a hybrid event last week, and part of the conversation was just around the surprise that we feel as a collective, that it's taking us longer than we realized, than we thought it would, I don't know how else to say this, but to feel better, to
Yeah.
not feel so, kind of pulled from the pandemic, or not to feel so rocked and reeled. And I used myself as an example, that I thought that I would feel better after closing the hybrid spaces permanently during the pandemic. I thought that I would feel better in 6 to 12 months. I thought I would regain my footing, finish my book, and that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And I think part of why that didn't happen, and part of the lesson that I needed to learn, was that I was really burnt out.
Mm.
And I needed to know that. I almost didn't allow myself to acknowledge it. So let's talk about burnout, because we've all felt it, and in many cases are still feeling it. And it's a
Yeah.
big theme that you talk about in the book. And I'd love for you to chat about burnout.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We know this feeling of physical burnout, right? Of exhaustion and tiredness, and this desire of like, oh, I just need a weekend off. And what I'm noticing with a lot of my clients right now is, because we've been so go, go, go for so long, and then also trying to survive through lockdown and pivoting, and we're not just startups, we're restartups and restarting
Yes.
again and again, that there is more than just physical burnout, where it's, take a nap, get a massage, all the things, and you're like, but why
Right.
don't I feel better? Why am I still hitting my head against the wall? Why do I still feel confused and overwhelmed and don't know where to go next? And it's because we're actually experiencing mental burnout. So
Right.
it's this open loop, or these open tabs in our brain, and also on our computers, because I'm sure if we were to say how many tabs we have open, but that is the intellectual, the mental stimulation, where we might be physically laying down in our beds, but we are ruminating of, should I do this? Should I do that? What do I do next? Who do I hire? What support do I need? There's so much. And then the invisible workload of what we carry, not just in our careers and our businesses, but also in our home lives and in our
Right.
relationships, whether we're caregiving for elders or kids, or like you, empty nesting, all of these things, launching kids into college, or caregiving our own chronic illnesses. Like there are so many pieces, so many hats that we are wearing that of course we're burnt out. And I want to also remove some of the, I don't know if it's shame around burnout, like, oh, I'm burnt out, this is a bad thing. A friend of mine sent me this video. I wish I could remember the woman's name, but she was naming, you knowing that you're burnt out is actually a sign of growth and healing, because now you have awareness, where before we were burnt out but we didn't know it, we didn't name it, and we didn't do anything about it. We just kept pushing our way through. And so I think that now we're able to name things, we can normalize it, and then we can also start to heal and create more nourishing practices to sustain us for the long haul.
I mean, for those of you that can't see our video and are listening, I am nodding emphatically because it's so true. I mean, I think we not only normalized burnout, but it was almost considered like a rite of passage, badge of honor. Like it means you're working hard. It means you're a good girl, you're a good student, you're a hard worker, you have a great work ethic, you're creating a great business, you're growing, you're hustling. As if that were good.
Yeah.
And I think it took us recognizing not only that we were participating and it, not at our own fault, but like societally, we were being, conditioned to believe that this was the path. And to realize that it didn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
It didn't have to keep participating in that way. We had to be forced.
Yeah. And it's not our fault. Like hustle culture makes us think that we're not doing enough, we're not making enough. And so there's this proving, there's a scarcity, but also there hasn't been a lot of models. So the things that are glorified are the businesses and companies that are operating from hustle culture. And I also don't want to say there's anything wrong with that. There are seasons when we have to push and we have to
Yes.
get something to the finish line. So I'm not saying that we're just floating on floaties and sipping on margaritas and all of that. There's a richness and a fullness and also nuance to productivity and how we get creative projects to the finish line. But we have to honor our humanity. We have to honor our capacity. We have to honor our rhythms and seasons of life, which there just haven't been models for that. Because I know into that, like 2013, when I was in my restart up mode of closing down my brick and mortar business on Kauai and trying to find my feet again, I was searching for models. I was searching for women who were moms, who were also building businesses, and I just didn't see any. And so the closest thing that I found was my mentor and friend, Jonathan Fields. He's a dude, but I felt like he was really aligned with the ethos around community building and building from a place of love, but also he has a wife and a kid. And so it was at least something closer to, but that is why I wrote She Builds, is because representation matters. And we need more business books written by people with different life circumstances, not just the unicorn billion-dollar IPO companies that most of us are not trying to build or recreate, but that's the only structure and systems and step-by-step that we have. And so I feel that more books are coming out in the world to represent more diverse voices on what it means to build and how we can build differently.
I couldn't agree with you more. And it's interesting. I was really thinking during a time of my own burnout of the women that I really admire and the traits and characteristics that they had. And when I wrote those traits and characteristics down, it was words like spaciousness. They make time for people to feel like their interactions, their relationships are important. They never feel frenzied. You never feel cut off by them. None of that was related to productivity and generation and, like generating anything, wealth or time or anything. Like it was more about this, like watching and admiring this feeling of spaciousness. And it's interesting because you're absolutely right. I noticed that those models were, they were in my like relationships and in my networks of people, but they weren't necessarily on my bookshelves yet. And now they are. So I feel like you have been one of those examples for me of someone that, and even being close to you during the process of writing the book and watching you shift your energy and protect your energy when you were writing the book. I remember, you would definitely have weeks at a time blocked off for writing, and even sometimes that you kind of escaped to a hotel and really went in that. But it was so inspiring as your friend and someone that's also writing a book too, to watch and learn from that, of go like, we don't have to hustle towards the finish line, and we can still produce and generate something really thoughtful, really beautiful. Do you want to talk a little bit about, because it's a little bit meta when you're like, you're practicing the anti-hustle practices of the book in order to write the book, right?
Yes, there were so many things that I had to do. One, I had to ask for more time with my publishing editor because I noticed I wasn't getting traction in the book, or I just need a little bit more spaciousness. And then I think I was about to ask for another extension for the third time. And I was talking to my life coach at the time, Rebecca McLaughlin. And I was like, I think I need to ask for more time. That's an anti-hustle way of being, is to ask for more time. And she was like, I feel like you can make this deadline this time. And I was like, well, I don't know. And so we started looking at my calendar. She's like, what if you did solo writing retreats where you rearranged your schedule with your client, so you had these 3 to 4 days consistently to write, step away from your home responsibilities with your family, and just be in this creative space to write, really a creative cocoon. And I was so excited and energized by that idea of like, ooh, a little love affair, a little rendezvous with my book. And I had been trying to be a writer the way that a lot of male dominated writers will say, which is to write every single day, wake up at this time, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning, write for an hour, write this amount of words per day. And I was doing that for 4 to 5 months, but I just felt like I wasn't getting a sense and flow of the book. I was moving it forward from a milestone perspective, but not from a heart-centered perspective where I really got what I was writing. And so I booked at least three 3 hotel getaways in San Francisco Bay Area. The criteria was no more than 2 hours away from where we live, somewhere inspiring, definitely need a hot tub to soak in. And I just gave myself the space to focus on each part of the book. So every hotel getaway, there's 4 parts in the book: lead, optimize, visualize, expand. So I think I did at least 4. And I would focus on those few chapters for each writing retreat. And I just loved the process so much. I had my green juice, I had food ordered. I didn't have to say hello to anybody or what do you want to eat? I just got to roll out of bed, put on my robe, and start writing. And something that really helped me in the process was I would meet with my life coach even in the morning, just to make sure my booty was in the seat, laptop was open, chapter doc was ready to go. And I would talk out what I was about to write and share if there was any emotional resistance. Because oftentimes we think it's a strategy or a step, but there might be something that's blocking us on an emotional level. And that was really helpful for me. And I talk about this in the book of gathering your support squad and being able, like, who are the people that you need? Sometimes it's not a what or a when, it's a who, right? Who do I need to help me get this to the finish line? And so that process was really, really helpful, of having a time, a place, and then a person that was really helping me move it forward.
Oh, I love that. I love it. And the thing that I think is really important for all of us to know, whether it's writing a book or exploring our next chapter or dreaming up a new business or growing an existing business and wanting the spaciousness to plan in that, we all respond differently, and just knowing that, like, I think what helps is like being attuned, like what you did, being attuned to what gets you in creative flow.
Mm-hmm.
And, for me, I think I'm similar to you that, for me, it really helps me to be somewhere else, to
Yeah.
not be in my day-to-day existence. And I read, I don't know, I can't remember the statistic, but just the time it takes from the moment you are interrupted to get back into flow is pretty monumental. I can't remember the exact number, but it matters. And I
Yeah.
think when we're in our day-to-day lives, the dog needs to go out, and whatever happens, like the kid comes home from school or the phone rings, or there's all these things that we're contending with. And yet I know for me, and you've heard me say this, then I still would put it back on me. It's like, it's my fault. I'm not getting through this. I'm not like, but life is really, constantly interrupting, and it takes time to get back in that
Yeah.
creative flow.
Yes, yes. And having the space to have like the index cards, the post-its, the sharp, just everything laid out versus like, okay, let me put everything back away in its safe little space. There's something about giving it that amount of spaciousness, expansive time to really get into it versus going in and out. And I know that term, I think they call it context switching, right? Where you're
Yes.
kind of like moving back and forth. And it's like, oh, I stopped this thing. Now I'm onto this. And to rebuild and get focused again. And I will say, having someone to talk to while I was on the writing retreat was very helpful because I had a fear. I'm like, I've done this before. Like I did this with simple green smoothies where I was like, oh, this is just a me retreat, like I just want to like watch some Sex in the City, lay down, order food and room service, and not get any progress done with the writing. So there's sometimes we need that extra accountability and that space away too, and also intention of what am I doing while I'm here and what am I hoping
Yes.
to complete.
100%, 100%. And, I've done a couple different methods like that. One being that I had to write all day and read to someone at the end of the day what I had written. And so it kept me writing because I knew I was going to have to show up and read to someone. And you and I've talked about this before, these things could be free. Like I've done day-long writing retreats for myself at the library.
Mm-hmm.
And, I live in a town where there's a gorgeous public library, and there's a beautiful window looking out at the trees. And that has been my writing retreat day. And it's, we can find it in all kinds of ways, but I learned so much from you in that process of.
Yeah. And I just want to name this other side because just thinking about from accessibility and not everyone can, and I love that you shared the library because that's free, right? We don't necessarily need to go book a fancy hotel. But I noticed also just knowing what type of work you do in certain locations. So even for me, writing sales pages, for some reason, when I write a sales page for any of my offerings, I will do it on a weekend when there's nothing scheduled, no one's pinging me, no emails are coming in, and I will be in my bed, like just cozied up with
Yes.
blankets and things. I just want to also name that, but naming it to my family, hey, I'm working on this thing. So I'm just going to be in that creative state because I truly need a full day to be able to work on something, that creative output. So I just want to name that it's also okay every now and then to work on a weekend. And then maybe you take a weekday off or really playing with that. And sometimes it's okay to do work in your pajamas with your laptop in your lap.
100%, 100%. There was a cafe that I used to go to when I was dreaming up what the Hivery could be. And in that cafe, as busy and crazy as it was, all my ideas for the Hivery came forward. I couldn't do anything else there. Like I couldn't really, like I couldn't write about other things there. I couldn't research there, but there was something about journaling about the Hivery that in
Mm.
that place. And it's just the recognition that, oh, interesting. My brain likes to think about this here.
Yeah. Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So one of the things that you and I agree on among many is just the power. And you mentioned it when you talked about what worked so well for you on that retreat day was to have someone to talk to, or those hotel retreat days to have someone to check in with. And I know we agree so deeply on the power of community. And we've shared experiences of both women that we both coached and women, that we have both interacted with, of just like sometimes people think that they're stuck and what they really are is isolated.
Yeah.
And so, and you talk in the book about just the importance of having what you call support squads, which I love. I love. Will you talk to us a little bit about that, just both personally for yourself, of the impact of community and what that has actually meant to you as a writer and an entrepreneur and a mother, and all of the ways that you interact with the world, and then and how, how those of us that are feeling disconnected or stuck or overwhelmed, how we can bring in that support squad and that feeling of community.
Yeah, I think it's so important. As humans, we are designed for connection and collaboration. And then for highly ambitious people who are creative thinkers, have a lot of ideas. I know for you and I, being able to verbally process out loud too, to also be honest and vulnerable about what we're struggling with, but then also having the space and creativity to talk about possibility and ideas, and getting that feedback, being able to soundboard with other people. So for me, I look at support squad as a holistic support system. So we have our mentors, like our mentors from afar. They could be mentors that you hire. It's a coach, a life coach, a business coach. We also have our mastermind, right? This is our peers and our colleagues, people who are going through the same
Yes.
struggles as us. And then we have the mindset support of having a safe space to be seen and heard. And that's having the therapy and the life coaching and those pieces. So we get stuck in different areas of our life. And I thrive so much on being in community that I'm always in peer-based masterminds and communities, but also paid or paid coach in some form or fashion, because it just helps me think and strategize and get out of my head and not be just ruminating over the same problem over and over again and not making any progress or momentum. And I think the community piece, it actually makes it fun, because some
Yes.
business stuff is actually really boring and unsexy. And there's something about going in a coffee shop or co-working space and being able to be around other people. They actually talk about this as far as neurodiversity, or people who are maybe have ADHD, of body doubling. That
Right.
when there is another physical person in the room with you, and you're able to name the thing that you are focusing on, that then you're able to focus and actually do that one thing. So just having that physical presence of other people around us is not only helps us increase our productivity, but it's also so nourishing. Like everything is just more joyful, more fun, more celebratory, right? Like celebrating to yourself or in your journal and your gratitude is cool, but being able to celebrate, or as you call it, like ringing the victory bell,
Yes.
what's going good in our lives and our work is so fulfilling.
Oh my gosh, it makes all the difference. I remember a couple months ago we had a Hivory incubator session, and we were doing them in person this past, I guess it was winter, spring, and which we hadn't done in years, of course, like everyone. And my plan had been for us to co-work together over the course of about like an hour and a half or 2 hours, I can't remember. And things just got a little derailed. And so that co-working session that we were going to do together got shortened. And so just in that moment, I decided, because it had gotten shortened, let's do it silently so that we could just, maximize our time. And it was magic. And it was literally, I don't know, maybe 30, 40 minutes. And because we were working side by side, there was like, by the time we all finished, everyone kind of reported back after, and we were all blown away that we had gotten the work done that we had scheduled, that we had intended to get done in an hour and a half. We actually finished it in 30 minutes because we were together. It's
Mm.
just, it's just magic. Even when you're not communicating, like you said, the body doubling and just the feeling of support, and knowing that we were going to report back to each other what we worked on and how it went. And for we were all amazed at how much we got done. Not everyone was like, I finished everything,
Yes,
like that's not
totally.
how it rolls. But it was just, it was such a lesson of like, oh my God, even in a short amount of time, we were able to pick up the energy of each other.
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned the time piece, because they talk about the Pomodoro technique where you set the
Yes.
timer for 25 minutes. One of my friends, Nikki Elledge Brown, we set timers for even a shorter amount of time, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, and just focus on that one thing. It's because for us, sometimes it's just the getting started
Mm-hmm.
to actually do it. Or when I co-work with my daughter Zoe, we'll go to a coffee shop together and we have the 2 hours of paid parking. There's something about that concentrated amount of time, but then I'm like, oh wait, I had a hot chocolate, I ate this. Oh no, I only have 40 minutes left now. I thought I had 2 hours to do this thing, but there's something about the physical presence and also that time. Actually, the shorter time really helps us focus too.
Yes. Yeah. And I realized too that some of that warm up time, the getting the hot chocolate and the getting settled at the computer, there's still creativity flowing in there. Like we're still taking in ideas. Our subconscious is working. Cause I used to, beat myself up a bit and say, like, I had 2 hours and I only wrote for 30 or whatever. But there were still things happening. There was still creative flow. We have to kind of give ourselves a break and say
Yes.
the hot chocolate is part of the creative experience.
I love that you say that because it's also a reward or something that you're going to be looking forward to the next time. When I'm co-working with my daughter, she doesn't want to work on homework or anything, but it's like,
Right.
we're going to get hot chocolate. Okay, I'm in. I'll be there. I'll get my butt in the seat and do the work.
Oh, I love that. I love that. How do you feel like, I mean, you have helped so many women, including me, grow with your wisdom and, with this new approach, again, the importance of community, the importance of honoring our flow and this anti-hustle guide. How have you changed? How have since you wrote the book or even over the last, since you published the book and you're getting well-deserved and fabulous attention for your beautiful book. What do you feel like is changing or brewing inside you?
Yeah. I think one piece is there's a layer of confidence in the body of work. So I really look at books in general as a time capsule. So I look at Simple Green Smoothies and I was really complete with that season of expression of work. But the book really helped kind of create this time capsule of capturing that body of work. Mm-hmm. And with She Builds, it feels like it encapsulated this 10 plus years of entrepreneurship. And that now I have this reference manual to refer back to because now the work is coming to life in person. And so I don't know, there's like this completion cycle in the creativity of that work. It's like, it's here. We now have it as a reference manual. People can come into my creative studio and do a lot of these exercises in person. And I feel there's just these seeds of ideas planting in me right now of like the what's next, which is why this podcast is so perfect. And I don't know what the what next is, but there's seeds being planted around it. And for me, it's usually comes in the form of a book to encapsulate an idea. And there are a couple of things that are brewing inside me. One, the power of creativity and writing and community and inspiring locations. And I just did a book retreat in Florence, Italy, which was amazing. And I'm like, more please. I co-led that with my friend Jennifer Kim, and we talked about book deals and book proposals, and the work and the effort that goes into that process.
Yes.
So I would love to now read more writing retreats and creating that space and creativity for others. And then I think the other piece of also talking about company culture as a whole and how do we build from love using the framework of love, not just in small businesses, but also in bigger corporations that are impacting the way that we operate and work culture. So there's something brewing there where I like She Builds is very specific for a very specific creative woman. And there's something in me that wants this ethos to spread beyond just the small creative businesses and get into the companies that have the millions and billions of dollars, but are impacting people that work in it who are burning out and aren't able to keep up with the pace of the visionary ideas. So I've been doing a lot of work with my clients and their team members And I get really lit up about kind of taking people through the visioning process, the dreaming process, the quarterly planning process, but doing it with their teams has been really exciting me a lot. So I have a few open loops and seeds being planted, and I'm open to seeing what wants to take form next. And I think
Yes.
for me, of how I've changed internally is really trusting timing, trusting the creative process, and knowing that no one project is the same. The way that I wrote Simple Green Smoothies was very burnout producing and simple. That piece, I hustled to get this health and wellness book out into the world, and She Builds just came from a very grounded, intuitive, trusting space and place. So and I know the next book might feel and look a little different too. And so really just trusting the creative process and meeting myself in the moment for each creative endeavor.
Yes. Yes. And for those that don't know, I think your story is so inspiring and your message is so inspiring. And we know that, and we've certainly been there ourselves, but there is that listener out there that is like, but what if I don't know what I want to do? Or what if my experience of what I did then is so vastly different from where I want to go? Will you just tell a little bit about your story from Simple Green Smoothies and what that was and what you created there to where you are now? Because I think people need to know how much we can change, we can do wildly different things and still take who we are along for the ride, take our wisdom, take our values, take our authentic truth, take what we learned. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit about the backstory of the way back when with Simple Green Smoothies.
Yes. Yeah. And as I mentioned, I had the brick and mortar business in Kauai. We closed that business down. And then in 2012, we created an Instagram account and we grew that to over 400,000 followers, Simple Green Smoothies. And we launched a 21-day cleanse that first had a 30-day green smoothie challenge that grew our email list to over 355,000 subscribers. And then we launched a product that generated over $1 million in 2 years. And really, the ethos of how we built that company was building from a place of love, from serving our community, really taking care of them. But also something that can happen when we are givers. Sometimes we can be over givers or over responsible, and we can burn out in that process.
You're kidding me. I know, just kidding. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have done that. I have done that. So many of us
Yeah.
have.
But I knew in 2013 with Simple Green Smoothies that I was ready for my next chapter.
Yes.
And 2013 is when Simple Green Smoothies just took off. We did $86,000 in 10 days. And I was already exploring the what's next. There's something about, okay, I've accomplished it. I showed that you can do what you love and build a business and work from anywhere. I want to help other people do this. I think as women, we tend to experience something and then we're like, how can I help others go through this process so that they don't have to go through as many struggles or overwhelm? And so 2013, I knew I didn't sell Simple Green Smoothies until 2016. And I sold my half to my business partner. She still runs the company today. We had a second book deal on the table when I was choosing to exit the company, and I was torn. So sometimes we can create these golden handcuffs, even within our own businesses.
Right.
And also identity. I was like, if I leave Simple Green Smoothies, no one's ever going to invite me on their stage, on their podcast. I just had all these fears that I wouldn't be able to have the opportunities if I left this thing. Like my worthiness, all my stock was in Simple Green Smoothies. And I think that a lot of us can relate to that, where we're like, I've put so much effort and energy, and this is what I'm known for. And I just knew I didn't want to be the green smoothie girl anymore. And my friend said, you can't write a book about the thing that you don't want to be known for. So I knew I had to walk away from that book deal. Even though I wrote that book proposal, it was a very good book advance on the table. I just knew I had to step into my next chapter and be in that identity crisis of who am I? What am I doing? What do I want to be when I grow up? And that those questions don't go away. As soon as I finished She Builds, it was the same questions like, who am I? How do I want to make money? What do I want to be when I grow up? I think as creatives, we have these constant creative evolutions of how we are growing from the inside out and how we want to express ourselves even deeper with more authenticity and truth. And I just, yeah, so that's kind of like a quick summary of that, of growing Simple Green Smoothies, and then also
Yeah.
letting it go and stepping away so that I could write She Builds.
So I think it's so powerful and important. And I think one of the themes that you touched on that I really want to reiterate for our listeners is that just because we figure out what we want to do in one moment doesn't mean that it's permanent. Like we kind of return to this state. And I know you and I have talked about this before, like, you know, we have both had the great pleasure of being able to do work that we're passionate about, but that doesn't mean that you like set it and forget it and find it and then like that's the holy grail. Like I have certainly had to come back again to the feeling of who am I, what do I do again, what's my identity, what is my identity related to what I do, and what is my identity that is just me being me. And I think the lesson for me was, oh, this is, like you said, as creative humans, this is part of the experience. That it's not like a one-time like epiphany that we just get to hold on to, but part of the experience is finding those new chapters again and again and again. And it's a bit of a relief to know.
Mm-hmm.
It's right. It's a bit of a
Yeah.
relief to know, like I may find something that lights my fire again, and I may write that book and I may start that business, and that will be good in some
Yeah.
ways. And then I may recreate again. And in some ways, it just kind of takes the pressure off having to know this eternal, everlasting answer.
Yes.
Right?
And I also think naming the intangibles that you take away as you leave or close one chapter, right? Close
Right.
one door. What are the things that I took away from Little Sprouts Playhouse, even if that physical business doesn't exist anymore? What are
Right.
the pieces that I took from Simple Green Smoothies that I can bring into my next chapter? So those intangible pieces. And then there's just your essence and your energy, who you are. That does not stay in Simple Green Smoothies. That does not stay in the brick and mortar that no longer exists. That will be in every creative endeavor that I pursue. We can't take that piece away, but there is still going to be loss. There is still going
Yes.
to be grief and processing. Even if you actually wanted to move in a new direction, you are
Yes.
still going to feel the holding and the scarcity and the fear and the uncertainty. And knowing that that is actually part of the process, it's actually part of being human, and really honoring that impermanence. And that's why I think us being able to connect to our vision and what we want to create in that next chapter again and again is so important. Which
Yes.
something that I'd love to share with your listeners is, if they want to go through basically a step-by-step process of how to create that future vision. We did it last
Yes.
together,
Yes.
of being able to, what is for, that next chapter for people. If you go to shebuilds.com/vision and put in the code GRACE,
Oh,
GRACE, it'll be free. So you don't have to pay for it, but it's a 75-minute video workshop with prompts and all of that to really connect to how do you want to feel in your relationships, the contribution you want to make, your company or your body of work that you're putting out in the world, and really creating the spaciousness to think about that, what's next, for us, because we have to keep revisiting that over and over again. Because I think for us ambitious people is that we actually accomplish a lot of the things that we set out to. And then we're like, wait, what's next? And being able to create and kind of future cast what that is that you want to step into next.
it's so true. It's so true. I save all my journals, and I've looked back over the years in journals, and some of the things that I have envisioned that I thought seemed so far away and such a fantasy or such a, just like a blip of an idea. And I'll look back at those and be like down to the detail, they happened. It's just like, it's astounding. Not every single one, because we're not,
Yeah.
like part of our process is like, I think there's like some subconscious discernment that's happening in the background of, our subconscious is choosing the pathways for us, and in ways that we can't always, point our finger to. But I cannot tell you how many times, whether it's a vision board or a visioning exercise with you or a journaling exercise, where I look back and I'm like, oh my God, it's right there. That's what happened.
Yes, it's wild. And also, what I say is don't put a timeline on your dreams, put a timeline on your actions. So then you can start to pull those creative projects and just move them forward. But the timing and how it's all going to happen, that is out of our control of when it will actually come to fruition, or if
Yes.
it will come. But it's the pursuit of and actually enjoying the process of finding and discovering and exploring is actually where all the juice is for us anyways.
Oh, Jadah, I love talking with you. I love your book, She Builds. I love our conversations. I'm so grateful for our friendship and your inspiring words. Go ahead and tell people one more time so they can hear it, how to find you and get to that delicious visioning exercise.
Yeah. So if you go to shebuilds.com, you'll see all the details for the book and different things like that. But if you go to shebuilds.com/vision and then enter the code GRACE, you'll get the free class to move through the visioning process. And then my personal website is jadahtsellner.com. And I'm at Jadah Sellner on all the social media platforms. And also, we have you on the Lead with Love podcast. So I think we need to definitely have people listen to that conversation. And I feel like we're due for another recorded conversation on Lead with Love with you, because you have stepped into your next chapter and season. And I would love to capture that story there too.
Oh, I would love it. I would love it. And everybody read She Builds. I promise you will love it. You will grow from it. I know that I have. And Jadah, thank you. Thank you so much for being with us. It's such a pleasure. I hope you found this episode helpful, idea-provoking, and inspiring, especially if you're in the midst of creating or clarifying your next chapter. I can't even put into words how much I appreciate you, your vulnerability, your stories of creating a life and meaningful work amidst adversity, grief, ever-changing and challenging times, and of course, life's peaks and uncertain valleys. You are seekers, wisdom sharers, and artists of life, and together we can build meaningful next chapters that feel aligned with who we really are, what we're put on this earth to do, and how we can make a difference one human being at a time. Please subscribe on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And I would love it if you could leave a review for the art of what's next. If you know someone who wants to create a new chapter or who would appreciate this episode, please share it with them. You can text it to them or email them the link or post about the show on your Instagram. If you want more help in creating your own meaningful next chapter, join the Hivery newsletter to get inspiration, stories, and resources to help you create your next chapter like an artist. Sign up at thehivery.com/podcast or at the link in the show notes.